Hi, this is Michelle Dumas, and for those who don't know me, I have been writing resumes professionally for more than 25 years, and I am also the creator of all the distinctive resume templates that you see on the distinctiveresumetemplates.com website. Now, while there are a few exceptions, which I have actually specified on the resume templates themselves, I specifically design all of the distinctive resume templates to be both visually attractive and ATS friendly. So, with that understanding, one of the most common questions that I get is about the tables that I have used in some of my resume templates. As resume writers, it has just been completely drilled into our heads that using tables in a resume will cause some problems with applicant tracking system compatibility. Well, I'm here to tell you that this statement is only partially true. Tables can cause problems in an ATS, but that fact is not universally true. And tables, I think, are one of the most misunderstood topics when it comes to ATS compatibility of resumes. Very simple tables that are used in very specific ways are perfectly okay in an ATS-friendly resume. Now, I am going to explain that statement more, and I'm going to show you some examples. But first, it's really important to understand a bit about the way that applicant tracking software works. Now, this is a simplified explanation, but applicant tracking software essentially reads the text underneath all of the pretty formatting of a resume. So I want to show you a quick example of what I mean. Get that out of here. Okay, so this is a resume that I wrote for a client, and I wrote it fairly recently. While some of the elements on here might look like pure graphics to you, they are actually graphics that are overlaying text, and you'll understand more about why this is important when I show you some more examples. But just so you see what I mean, this is a graphic that's overlaying the text that you can select on the page. This is a graphic that's simply overlaying the text that's on the page. And this is a graphic that's overlaying white text that's on the page. This resume even uses a simple two-column table, and let me show you by turning on View Grid Lines. There is, so you can maybe see it over here now, there's a two-column table here. And this, again, is just a graphic that's overlaying that first column in the table, the text that's in the column. Now that I've shown you that, let's take this resume, which is attractive and eye-appealing. I think everyone would agree about that. And we'll save it as plain text. So the way that you do that is to go up here to File and then Save As, and then you would save it as plain text, which is right here. And I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it, but that is how you would save it. And this is a good way to actually check how a resume would look when it goes into an ATS, so I do this quite frequently. So let me pull up the text version of that. Okay, so here is the text version. Now, as you can see, I didn't retouch any of this. This is just how it looked when I created it as text. So as you can see, all of the graphics have disappeared, all of the pretty formatting has disappeared, and what you have left here is just the text. And even the text that was within the table, which is this, the personal mission, you can see that here, personal mission, and then the text, and then the executive assets, is retained in the text. It's ignored the graphics, it has ignored the table, and it has just seen the text. This is what happens when you put a resume through an applicant tracking system. The applicant tracking system reads the code that's underneath the page. So why then, if the text from a table is read into a resume, why then has the common advice always been to not use tables in an ATS-friendly resume? Well, when I investigated this more a number of years ago, I found that the reason for this is that many people use very complex tables to set up an entire resume or to set up sections of a resume. When you use a complex table, even if the ATS reads the text that is in it, that text is almost certain to be jumbled and mixed up. And this is especially critical when the text in the table includes section headings or employers and job titles and other key little bits of data that help the ATS to properly categorize the text as it reads it. So I want to show you some, now that I've explained all of that, I want to show you some examples of what you do not want to do. So here is a resume. Let me bring up another one. All right, so very different style. Let me turn off so you can just see it. This is very different. This was written a very long time ago, as you can probably tell from the style. From the dates on here, it appears to have been written in approximately 2000, probably. And I wrote this for a client at the time. And I used this two-column format that was very, very popular back then. I think that we called it a newspaper column format. Now, back then, in what was the precursor of modern applicant tracking systems, we had to worry about whether a resume was scannable. So in other words, we had to make sure the printed paper resume could be put through a scanner and then that the text could be read through the OCR software into a database, similar to an applicant tracking system, but somewhat different because we were dealing with actual paper resumes. So this resume would not have been scannable. However, since people were still largely dealing with paper resumes, the solution at the time that most professional resume writers used was to create an attractive resume meant for the human reader, such as this one, and also a separate scannable resume that could be put through the scanner and read by OCR. Now, this is a story for another day, but if you came into the resume writing world after scannable resumes, you're really lucky. The rules for ATS-compatible resumes are nothing compared to the complex and rigid rules that we had to deal with when we were dealing with scannable resumes. In any case, and I'm going to turn back on the grid line so you can see it, in any case, when you look at how I created this resume, the way that I arranged it in these columns was using a table. And I used that table to set up almost the entire resume, everything except for the name and contact information up here. So this was fine back in 2000 and back in those days, as long as you had a separate scannable resume, and I'm sure I had a separate scannable resume for this person. But this is completely unacceptable now when creating an ATS-friendly resume. So this is an example of what not to do. And when I saved it as text, and let me pull that up. I think it's this one. Okay. Yes. When I saved it as text, it shows why. So when when it's read into an applicant tracking system, when it's saved as just plain text, which is similar to the way it would be read into an applicant tracking system, you see it reads the name and address, that's fine, and then it reads this section, that's fine. But then we get down here and it reads qualification summary. Whoops, darn. Let me bring that back up. Qualification summary, and then there's a blank here, and then it goes on to professional background, and then it takes the text from here and it puts it into the professional background before we actually get to the experience section, which is here. So in any case, what it does is it jumbles up the order of the sections. Now, this particular example wasn't all that awful, but some resumes are set up in a very complex table, and it's a real problem, especially when the tables get very, very complex. It's a real problem. And back in 2000, we didn't really have the capabilities to make it too much fancier than this, but we do now. And that's why it is so very disturbing to me that every single resume template, or at least every one that I've seen, that is included by default in Microsoft Word is set up in tables. And let me show you what I mean. So if you come over here and you go new, You may know this. So here are your default templates are under Office, and then if you have personal templates, they're going to be down here under Personal. But so if you want to search for, say, resume templates, you would search for resume, and you get back all of these templates. Now, let's just take an example. Let's take this example. This looks like a pretty basic one. So let's take this example and go create. Oops, let me pull it back up here because it came up on the wrong screen. Okay, and get rid of this. That's annoying. If you look at this, and I have the grid lines turned on, you can see that it's completely set up in a table. If somebody were to create their resume using this template and try to put it into an applicant tracking system, it would be completely incompatible. It would be completely jumbled up. Let me show you one other example. I have this up here because I was looking at them. Let's take a look at this one. This is another pretty basic one, so we'll create it. And again, it's the same thing. It's completely incompatible. In this case, we're going to get the person's name and then whatever they put here in the professional title. Then it's probably going down here to read the phone number, and then the words about me, and then probably this email, and then probably whatever is in this particular column, and then probably what's in this column, and then maybe over here to get the email, and so forth. It would be completely jumbled up and completely incompatible. And if you were to look at any of the other example default templates in Microsoft Word, it would be the same. So all of the poor job seekers who are using these are probably not aware that their resume is not applicant tracking system friendly at all. All right, so let's look at another example of what not to do. And this one includes data tables. All right, so this is the first page of, let me see if I can make it a little bigger. This is the first page of a resume that I had written for a client. I'm only including the first page because I didn't want to complicate things. So you can see the way it looks with the grid lines turned off, and then when I turn the grid lines on, you can see that I actually use tables in a few different places. So I've used it up here. It's a 2-column table. The person's name is here, and then their address is over here. This is just a text box, which would be seen as a graphic in an applicant tracking system and completely skipped over. So you can just, whoops, I'm trying to move it so you can see, and it's just completely messing things up here. Let me see if I can. There we go. So it would be skipped over in an applicant tracking system, but what we're concerned with here are just the the tables and the text within them. And then if you see down here, I've used a table here. You can see that because the grid lines are around it. It's just a simple 2-column table. This is actually the executive performance snapshot, and text is actually set up in a table as well. This is a 1-column, 2-row table. Again, a very simple table. But then when we come down here, you'll see that I have set up all of this data, all of these numbers that this client provided me in a data table. Now, when we're dealing with numbers, sometimes a table really is the easiest way to present them in a way that is quickly discernible. Unfortunately, this is not good in an applicant tracking system. So let me show you what happens and why I say that. Let me pull this one up. So again, I have saved this as text, so it has read the person's name and contact information. Even though it was in a table, it just read it. It read this one to this one. And then it skipped this. As I said, it would skip it. And we went on to the text. If we come down here, this is the executive performance snapshot. So that's what this particular, let's see if I can make this smaller. That's this table here. Everything is good so far. Even this, so this 2-column table is just automatically ordered itself in a 1-column bulleted section. But then we get down to the data. And what we have here is just a mess of numbers and years, and all sorts of things that make absolutely no sense. Now, it's worth noting that this doesn't actually break the ATS compatibility of a resume. This would still get entered into the applicant tracking system. The only problem is, however, that all of this looks like this in the applicant tracking system. And so the recruiter coming along and trying to read this is suddenly presented with this list of stuff, numbers and data that just doesn't look very good and that they can't really understand what it actually meant unless they were to go back and open up the original resume. All right, so let's now kind of summarize when it is okay to use tables. And let me pull this up and make it a little bit bigger. So the first thing to understand is the order in which the applicant tracking system reads a table. And almost always, it's going to be from left to right. So from left to right, from cell 1 to cell 2. And then it will come down to cell 3 and then go to cell 4, cell 5, and then cell 6. This is what's called a 2-column, 3-row table. So again, left to right, just like I have the arrows pointing. The same thing would happen if we were using, say, a 3-column table like this one and 2 rows. So we'll read everything from left to right, cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, and then it comes back over here to the left, cell 4, cell 5, cell 6. But sometimes it will read everything in the left column from the top to the bottom, followed by the next column in the right, cell 1. So it would read everything from the top to the bottom in this column. Cell 1, cell 3, cell 5, and then up to cell 2, 4, and 6. And cell 1, 4, so everything in the left column, then the next column to the right, cell 2, and then cell 5, and then cell 3, and then cell 6. And the problem is that this is not necessarily predictable. Almost always, you can count on the ATS reading it like this. Cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, cell 4, and so forth. So from left to right. Every now and then, it might read it from the top to the bottom, top to the bottom. And this is why a complex table can cause problems. If we could really predict how it was going to read it, in which order it was going to read the cells, and we gave some real thought to the way that we set up our complex tables, we could perhaps use them. But this is why complex tables will often cause problems. So examples of how not to use tables in an ATS resume. So what I mean by a complex table. This is an example of a complex table where I've got the headings over here in one cell, followed by the text that it goes with the heading over here in the other column. Again, the heading over here separated from the text, which is actually separated into 2 different columns here. So this is 2 columns, and then we have 3 columns down here. And now down here in the experience section, we also have 3 columns. So this is a very complex setup. If you're lucky, the applicant tracking system will read the word profile and then go on to this and know that this text goes with this heading. And then it will read core competencies and it will go on to this and know that this text goes with this heading. But you can't count on that. It could technically go profile and then core competencies, experience, down here, selected accomplishments, and then jump up here and start reading this text, followed by this text, and who knows what it would do with this, and this, and this, and so forth. So the actual content of the resume gets separated from the headings. So you don't want to do that. Here's another simpler example where it's not a good idea to do this. Where you've got the heading separated from the text again, heading separated from the text, heading separated from the text. It would probably be fine, but it's possible that it could read everything from the top to the bottom, and then the top to the bottom, and the text gets separated from the heading, and therefore the ATS does not know how to categorize it. And for the same reason, you don't want to use complex data tables like this as well. And I already showed you that example. Again, no newspaper column formats. And like I said, this used to be a pretty popular format. So I found a couple of other examples in my files that I had used it. You don't want to do this anymore. This is not a good idea. And unfortunately, that includes do not use most of the or all of the default resume templates in Microsoft Word. They are not applicant tracking system friendly. All right, so examples of how it is okay to use tables in an applicant tracking system friendly resume. A simple one column table, and I do this in a lot of our templates where I have the name in one column and then I have the contact information over here in the right column. It's just a 2-column table. It will always read from here to here. Another way that I've used them frequently, and a lot of people do this, is I will use them if I have a section of qualifications that I want to present. I will often create a 2-column table, or in this case a 3-column table, and put them in the qualifications in the table, and that is perfectly okay to do as well. Another example. This is a little bit more complex, but it's still okay because the header is within the cell of the text that it goes with. As you can see, I've left all of the grid lines on so you can tell. So in this case, it's just a simple 2-column table. It's going to read this text followed by this text that will cause no problems in an applicant tracking system. And then finally, or actually not finally, but one of my final examples is this one, and this is a format that I often use as well, so there are 4 separate tables here. There's actually, it's hard to see, maybe if I make it a little bit bigger, you can see it. In between them, I've put in a couple of points of space, but these are actually 4 tables, and each one is a simple 2-column table. So we have the keyword here, followed by the bulleted accomplishment that goes with the particular keyword, and then a keyword here, followed by the bulleted accomplishment that goes with that keyword phrase. And so that is a format I often use as well. Now, technically, if I were to join these tables, so if there was not that space in there, it's not as much of an issue because almost always, like I said, it's going to read this column and this column first. So if, for example, if this were a 2-column 4-row table without these spaces in between them, it would almost always read this keyword followed by this accomplishment, followed by this keyword, followed by this accomplishment, this keyword, this accomplishment. In very rare cases, it could go down and read, all of these. So this, and this, and then read the accomplishments into it. It might look a little bit funny because you'd have 4 keyword phrases up here, followed by some accomplishments. However, it would not break the compatibility of the resume. And from a keyword standpoint, all of those keywords are still there and within the context of the position, so it doesn't hurt that either. However, if you're going to use this format, it's always best to break it up, as I've done here. And then finally, this one's a little bit unusual too, but this is just a 2-column table. And to make it a little bit fancier, I have just put this text sideways, which is an option in Microsoft Word. Again, it's the words behind the pretty formatting that the applicant tracking system is going to see. So a text version of this as well, just to show you. And this is what that looks like if it were to be entered into an applicant tracking system. So that success by the numbers, even though it's sideways in this, is just fine as well. So I really hope that this video has helped to clear up some of the confusion regarding the use of tables in a resume. and when you can use them and when you should not use them. My ultimate hope is that eventually applicant tracking technology is going to advance to the point where it will be intelligent enough to recognize the sections of a resume regardless of how it is laid out. And I have no doubt that that is coming at some point in the future. But until then, we have to work with what we have. So the bottom line is that as long as you use really simple tables and give some thought to the order in which the cells will be read, you can absolutely feel confident that those tables will not negatively impact the ATS compatibility of the resume. And so there's your answer. That is why when you look, here's some of my templates, and this is the portfolio of templates. You can see that some of them include tables, but they are all included in a way that is applicant tracking system friendly. There are a couple of, actually, I think there's only this one example, and I did note down here that this format could cause issues with an applicant tracking system, and I also noted it in the resume itself. And that is not necessarily because of the way I've used the tables, that's because of the order of the elements in the resume. So I would not recommend this format for if you need an applicant tracking system friendly resume. But all of the other examples, this one, the Berry Perfection, for example, you see the name here and the address here, and then the two columns that are used for the qualifications, and this one has 3 columns. So those are all completely applicant tracking system friendly. If you have any questions, I invite you to reach out to me, and I will be happy to answer your questions. Thanks.